never thought I'd be the one to feel abandoned in my final years. I had always prided myself on being the matriarch of our family, strong and unwavering, the one who gave everything for those I loved. But there I was, sitting in the quiet of my home, staring at the phone that never rang. My daughter, the one I had sacrificed so much for, had turned her back on me when I needed her most. The betrayal cut deeper than anything I had ever experienced. How could she? How could the child I gave everything to be the one to cast me aside? This wasn't just about neglect. It was about years of financial exploitation, lies, and the abandonment that left me questioning every decision I had made for her. It was on that day I made a decision. It wasn't about anger or hate. It was about justice. I wasn't going to let this betrayal go unpunished. She would regret the day she ever thought she could take advantage of me. My love had been unconditional, but now there were conditions. If she wanted to play this game, she'd have to face the consequences. The woman who once had everything was now ready to take back what was rightfully hers. I wouldn't sit idly by while my own daughter exploited me. But don't think the story is just about me and her. This could be anyone's story, yours even. So if you've ever been betrayed, financially exploited, or left out in your time of need, stay with me. We've all been there. I'd love to hear your story too. Make sure to subscribe because what you're about to hear will change everything you thought you knew about family. It started with small things. Over time, they added up. Little moments when I realized she wasn't the daughter I raised. Little signs I ignored until there were no more to ignore. The betrayal that was coming wasn't an isolated incident. No, it was a culmination of years of disregard. But this story, this moment, is where it all began to unravel. The tension in the air was palpable. I was sitting in my living room, the same place where so many memories had been made, and I was about to face the reality that my own flesh and blood had betrayed me. The years of sacrifice, of putting her needs above my own, meant nothing to her anymore. And that's when I realized I had been played. But not anymore. It was time for payback, and I would make sure she understood the weight of what she'd done. When I look back on my life, I remember a time when everything seemed possible. My husband, George, and I had big dreams that we believed would shape our family's future. We were going to grow old together in a comfortable home, surrounded by children and grandchildren, with no worries except how to spend our golden years in peace. It was a vision of quiet joy, of family dinners around the table, of laughter filling the house. But those dreams, like so many others, were shattered long before I ever thought they would be. George and I had always worked hard. He was a carpenter, a skilled craftsman who could turn a pile of wood into something beautiful. I worked as a secretary, always staying late to finish what needed to be done. We had our routine, and we stuck to it. We never asked for much. We were just two people trying to build something lasting, something we could pass down to our children. And when we had our daughter Clara, our world felt complete. She was everything to us. I watched her grow up with so much hope for her future. George and I always talked about how we would support her, give her opportunities we never had, make sure she could go to college and follow her dreams. We believed that if we worked hard enough, we could give her the life we never had. So when it came time for Clara to go to university, George and I didn't hesitate. We took out loans, worked extra hours, and sacrificed vacations, leisure time, anything that would give her the chance to succeed. It wasn't easy, but we did it. I remember the day we dropped her off at college like it was yesterday. The tears in my eyes weren't just for the pride I felt watching my daughter take that step. They were also for the years of hard work, of putting ourselves second so she could stand on her own. I had sacrificed my own dreams, my own desires for her future. But then things started to change. Slowly at first. At first, it was small. A missed call here, a forgotten birthday there. I brushed it off, convincing myself that she was busy with her studies, with life. But as time went on, I began to notice more. When I needed her, when I had health issues, she was nowhere to be found. It wasn't just that she didn't call, it was that I could see the shift in her. She had her own life now, and I wasn't part of it. Yet, even then, I didn't stop helping. I continued to send money when she asked for it, sometimes for rent, sometimes for emergencies she couldn't explain. I even covered her debts, helped her get her first car, paid for her wedding. Every time she came to me, no matter how much it hurt, I gave. I told myself, she's my daughter. She needs me. But looking back, I see it now. It wasn't just the sacrifices. It wasn't just the time or money I gave. It was the emotional toll. Every time I handed over another check, I gave a little piece of myself away. I kept thinking that if I just gave enough, if I just kept trying, she would come around. She would remember the love and commitment I had shown her. But it was never enough for her. I began to see the signs more clearly. Little things like when she would ask for money but not even say thank you, or when I would invite her to a family event and she'd make excuses. Sometimes she'd just send a text, "Sorry, Mom, I can't make it." And when I questioned her about it, she'd always have a new excuse ready. In all those years, all those sacrifices, it seemed to count for nothing. When George passed away, I was left alone. All those years of working to build a future for my family suddenly felt like a cruel joke. My daughter, who was supposed to be the one to comfort me, the one to care for me, didn't even call to check on me for weeks after the funeral. As I looked at the empty chair across from me where George used to sit, I began to feel the weight of everything I'd given up. The dreams, the love, the endless sacrifices. It was all for nothing. I thought about the time when we were all happy, when Clara was still the bright-eyed girl I raised, but now I didn't even recognize her. And that's when it hit me. I had been used. My love, my hard work, my financial sacrifices, they'd all been a means to an end. And Clara had moved on, leaving me in the dust. I hadn't just been neglected, I had been taken advantage of, manipulated into thinking that my love was enough to hold us together, but it wasn't. She didn't care about all I had done. She only cared about what I could give her. That was the moment I knew. I had to stop. I couldn't keep enabling her behavior. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine when I was the only one giving. I had been a mother, a provider, a caretaker for everyone in my family, but I had neglected one thing, myself. It was time to change that. It was time to stop being the victim, to stop being the one left behind. I had been the one who gave, who loved, who sacrificed, but now it was time for me to take back what was rightfully mine. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Not after all I'd done for her. Not after everything we had been through together. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning, the kind of morning when everything should have been routine. I had woken up early, as I always did, to enjoy the peace before the house grew noisy. My health hadn't been the best lately. I had a fall a week before and bruised my leg badly, but I assured myself that it was just a minor setback. But this time, I didn't feel right. I knew something was wrong. I could barely make it to the kitchen without my body shaking. My breathing was shallow and my head spinned with dizziness. I called Clara like I had so many times before when I needed help or company. This time, I needed her. I needed my daughter to be there for me. The phone rang and rang. the sound cutting through the quiet of the house, filling me with a sense of dread I couldn't quite explain. Finally, she picked up. "Mom, I'm in the middle of something. Can you hold on a minute?" Her voice was distant, detached, nothing like the warmth I remembered. I told her I didn't feel well, that I needed someone to come over, just to make sure I was okay. I could hear her sigh. "Sorry, Mom, I really can't. I've got plans with some friends."
"Can't you just take it easy for today?" The words hit me like a slap. Take it easy. I needed help, and she was brushing me off as if it were nothing. "Clara, I'm not feeling well. Please, I can't get to the doctor by myself. I need you," I pleaded, my voice cracking. There was a long pause, and then she said something that I will never forget. "I'm really busy, Mom. You'll be fine. Call someone else." That was it. No offer to check in later, no compassion, no concern, just cold indifference. She hung up before I could say anything else. I stood there in the kitchen, the phone still pressed to my ear, staring at the wall in disbelief. How could she say that to me? How could she leave me like that? For a moment, I was frozen. I couldn't comprehend what had just happened. My own daughter, the person I had given everything to, had just turned her back on me in my time of need. It wasn't just neglect anymore. It was betrayal. A betrayal of the highest order. I sank into a chair, my mind racing. The shock of her words, the lack of any real empathy, hit me like a freight train. My body felt heavy, my heart aching with the weight of what I had just learned. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a one-time oversight. No, this was her true face, the daughter who had been taking from me for years and had no intention of giving anything back. I thought about all the times I had been there for her. When she needed money for school, when she called crying about some boy who had hurt her, when she was struggling after her divorce. I had always dropped everything to be there, always sacrificed for her. And this was how I was repaid. By being discarded, left to fend for myself when I was at my weakest. The anger started to rise in me. It wasn't just the shock of being abandoned. It was the indignity of it all. I had given so much of myself, my time, my energy, and she couldn't even give me the decency of showing up when I needed her. I had been a constant, loyal presence in her life, but in return, she saw me as an inconvenience. I stood up and paced the room, tears stinging my eyes, not from the pain in my body, but from the realization that I had been living a lie. I had been enabling her, letting her take advantage of me because I couldn't see how far she had drifted away. How could I have been so blind? Then something shifted in me. The sadness turned into something else, something much stronger. It was anger, yes, but more than that, it was clarity. I had been used for so long, and now I could finally see it. I had been living in this fog of denial, believing that love would fix everything. But now I was awake. I wasn't going to be a victim anymore. I grabbed the phone again, but this time I wasn't calling Clara. I wasn't going to beg for her attention. I wasn't going to make excuses for her behavior. No, this time I was going to make sure that she felt the consequences of what she had done. She was going to understand how it felt to be abandoned. This wasn't about getting back at her for the sake of revenge. It was about justice. She needed to face the reality of what she had done to me. I had given her the world, and she had repaid me with nothing but cruelty and disregard. The decision was made. I wasn't going to let this go. It wasn't just about this one moment, this one phone call. It was about All the years of sacrifice, all the times I had been there for her while she was busy taking me for granted. I wasn't going to let her take any more from me. Not my time, not my energy, and certainly not my dignity. I wasn't going to sit idly by anymore. I was going to make sure that this betrayal would not be forgotten. And I would do whatever it took to make sure that Clara understood the weight of what she had done to her own mother.
In the days following that phone call, I did something I never thought I would. I began gathering everything, the receipts, the bank statements, the emails, anything that could show the true extent of my sacrifices. Each piece of paper, each document I pulled from my drawer felt like another confirmation that I had been taken advantage of. The pain of it was still fresh, but now it was accompanied by a growing sense of purpose. The shock of my daughter's betrayal had awakened something inside me, something I had buried for far too long. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was determined. I started with the financial records. Every check I had written to help Clara, every wire transfer, every loan I had co-signed for her. It was all there, in black and white. My support for her education, for her first car, for the house she bought when she married. Each time I had believed it was for her future, for her well-being. And yet, each time I had been left with less and less for myself. I sat at my kitchen table, the piles of paperwork spread out before me. It felt like a betrayal all over again. Each one of those documents was a reminder of the trust I had placed in her, a trust that she had systematically abused. As I sifted through the papers, I saw the pattern clearly for the first time. My daughter hadn't just asked for help during hard times. She had manipulated me, used my love and generosity to get what she wanted without any intention of reciprocating. She had taken, but she had never once given anything in return. I gathered everything I could. Bank statements showing how much I had sent her over the years, the receipts from paying off her debts, the checks I had written for her when she claimed she was in financial trouble. It added up to thousands of dollars, and each figure stung more than the last. How had I let this go on for so long? How had I allowed myself to become her constant financial crutch? Next, I started documenting the broken promises, the times I had been promised a visit only for her to cancel last minute, the times I had asked for her company only to be told that she was too busy, and the worst of it all, the times I had asked for her help, just like I had in that moment of desperation, only to be ignored. I found a legal advisor, someone who could guide me through what I needed to do next. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let my daughter get away with this. I met with the lawyer several times over the course of the next few weeks. We discussed my options, the evidence I had gathered, and the potential legal actions I could take to hold Clara accountable. It wasn't an easy decision. I had always prided myself on keeping things within the family, on not airing dirty laundry for the world to see. But this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about making sure that Clara understood the consequences of her actions. This was about standing up for myself when no one else would. Each day, I felt myself growing stronger. The sadness that once overwhelmed me was slowly replaced by clarity, by a sense of control that I hadn't had in years. With each call I made to the lawyer, with each document I added to the pile, I felt a sense of power returning to me. It wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. It was about making sure that my daughter faced the truth and that she would never be able to exploit me again. I wasn't naive. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. I knew that my relationship with Clara, if it was even salvageable at all, would never be the same. But I was ready to face the fallout, ready to confront the truth, and most importantly, ready to make sure that this didn't happen to me or anyone else. As I prepared for the next step, I couldn't help but feel a rising sense of anticipation. The plan was coming together. The next phase of my journey was about to begin. I was no longer the woman who had been taken advantage of. I was the woman who would fight for what was rightfully hers. It was a Thursday when I made the decision. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I logged into my bank account. With a steady hand, I clicked on the transfer section, entering the numbers to cancel the automatic monthly payment I had been sending Clara for years. Every month, I had given her money to cover her bills, her rent, her lifestyle, money I could barely afford myself, but no more. It was done. With a quiet click, the transfer was canceled, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I had been giving her more than money. I had been giving her power over me, over my life. But now, I was taking that power back. This wasn't just about money. It was about my dignity, about my life, about standing up to the one person I never thought would hurt me. It wasn't just the money. I also made changes to my will. Clara had always been the beneficiary, but I wasn't about to leave everything to someone who had shown me nothing but indifference. I rewrote it, making sure that my assets would go to those who had been there for me, people who had actually shown respect and kindness in my life, people who would appreciate what I had built, not take it for granted. And with that, I knew there was no turning back. This was my first strike, my declaration of independence. But when Clara found out, the storm hit. The phone rang a few days later. I saw her name on the screen, and for a moment, I thought about letting it go to voicemail. But no, this was my fight, and I wasn't going to run from it. I answered, "Mom, what the hell is going on? Why did you stop the payments? You know I'm struggling. I can't make it without you." Her voice dripped with a mixture of anger and desperation, but it wasn't enough to shake me. For years, I had been the one to bail her out. It was my turn to stand my ground. "Clara, I've been helping you for years, but I can't do it anymore. I'm done enabling you. You've had plenty of chances to get your life together, and I'm not going to let you use me anymore." There was a silence on the other end, but I could hear her trying to compose herself, searching for the right words. "Mom, I'm your daughter. How could you do this to me? After everything I've been through, you're going to leave me with nothing?" Her voice wavered, but I wasn't swayed. I could almost picture her, sitting there trying to manipulate me with guilt, as she had done so many times before. I wasn't falling for it anymore. "You're not getting nothing, Clara. You're getting exactly what you deserve. You've used me for years, and I've let you. That's over now. You need to learn to stand on your own." I could hear the frustration in her voice as she tried one last time. "Mom, I don't know who you've become, but this isn't you. You're turning your back on your own flesh and blood." Her words cut, but they no longer had the power to wound. I had heard that line too many times, used against me to guilt trip me into submission. I wasn't going to fall for it again. "No, Clara," I said, my voice steady. "I'm turning my back on someone who never once appreciated me, who used me for their own gain. I'm not your piggy bank anymore, and I'm not your safety net. It's time for you to learn how to live without me." The silence on the other end was deafening. I could feel her shock, her disbelief. But there was something else there too. Fear. The realization that I wasn't the same person anymore. I wasn't the mother who would always give, always forgive, always enable. For the first time, I felt free. The liberation washed over me like a wave, filling the space that had been taken up by guilt and fear for so long. I had taken back control of my life, and it felt sweet. "You'll regret this," she finally muttered, her voice laced with venom. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. She had lost her power over me, and no amount of threats could change that. As I hung up, a sense of moral vindication settled in. I had done what I should have done years ago, taken back what was mine, my dignity, my peace of mind. I wasn't going to be the one to keep giving while she kept taking. But deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. Clara would retaliate. She would try everything she could to regain control, to manipulate me into giving her another chance. But I was ready. I had prepared for this moment. In whatever she tried, I wasn't going to back down. The tension was thick, and I knew that the next confrontation was coming. But I was no longer afraid. I had crossed the line, and I wasn't going back. I had done what I needed to do to reclaim my life, and no one, not even my daughter, was going to take that from me. It wasn't long after I canceled the payments and changed my will that the backlash began. At first, it was subtle. Little things that could easily be overlooked if you didn't know what was really going on. But then, it started to snowball. And before I knew it, my life had become a battleground. My daughter, Clara, had started spreading lies about me. I first heard about it from my neighbor, Carol, who had always been kind to me. She came over one afternoon, a concerned look on her face, and asked if I was okay. "We've heard some things, dear," she said. "People are talking about you." "Talking about me?" I asked, confused. "What are they saying?" She hesitated for a moment before replying. "There are rumors, you know. Clara's been telling people that you're not in your right mind, that you've been acting strangely, making rash decisions and cutting everyone off." I froze, my heart sinking. That was Clara's way, turning everything upside down, making me look like the villain. She had always been good at manipulating people, and now she was doing it to everyone we knew. It was the ultimate betrayal. She had painted me as unstable, as someone who had lost touch with reality just because I had stood up for myself. The rumors spread quickly. People I had known for years started avoiding me, looking at me with pity or suspicion. At the grocery store, I overheard women gossiping in hushed tones. "Did you hear about Clara's mom? She's been acting all kinds of crazy lately. No one knows what's going on with her. Poor Clara. She doesn't deserve this." I was being painted as a madwoman, as someone who had lost her grip on reality. The manipulation was cruel, but I knew Clara was behind it. She had to be. She knew just how to twist the truth, how to make me look bad to anyone who would listen. And unfortunately, it seemed like everyone was listening. I tried to reach out to people who had been close to me, friends who I thought would stand by my side, but they too were starting to distance themselves. One by one, I saw my support system crumble. Those who once cared for me now looked at me with suspicion, as if I was the one who had done something wrong. My own community had turned their back on me. The isolation was suffocating. It was as if I had become invisible, lost in a sea of whispers and half-truths. But the pain of being rejected, of being abandoned by everyone I had trusted, only fueled my determination. They could try to destroy my reputation. They could try to turn the world against me, but they would not silence me. At night, when the house was quiet and the weight of everything seemed to crush me, I would cry, but only for a moment. I couldn't afford to fall apart. I had come too far. No matter how hard Clara tried to make me feel small, no matter how many people she turned against me, I was resolute. The truth would come out. I had nothing to be ashamed of. The more people Clara manipulated, the more I realized how deeply entrenched her lies had become. But instead of breaking me, they only pushed me to fight harder. I started researching everything I could about slander and defamation. I spoke with a lawyer again, determined to protect my name. The truth would out, and when it did, Clara would have to face the consequences for what she had done. But in the meantime, I couldn't escape the social isolation. I would go to church and people would look the other way. My phone barely rang anymore. Even family members who used to call to check in began to fade away. It felt like I was being erased from everyone I had known. The pain was real, but I used it to fuel my fight for justice. The guilt that Clara tried to place on me, the pity that others expressed, none of it mattered anymore. I had come to a place where I understood something. This wasn't just about me. It was about everyone who had ever been taken advantage of by someone they loved. It was about standing up for yourself, no matter the cost.
I didn't care what the world thought anymore. Clara could lie, she could twist the truth, but I would stand firm. No one could take away the love and the sacrifices I had made for her. No one could take away the fact that I had been a mother who had always given, who had always supported her. Now, it was time for Clara to face the truth. I started collecting more evidence, documenting every moment, every conversation that proved I was in the right. I took notes on every conversation with her, every instance of manipulation or lies she had told. I knew the time was coming when I would confront her, and when I did, she would be exposed for who she really was. The day had come, the moment I had been preparing for, the moment I had been quietly but steadily building toward was finally here. I stood in the courtroom, my hands steady, my heart beating a little faster than usual. The air was thick with tension, the silence almost unbearable. It was time to expose the truth, to make sure that everyone knew what my daughter, Clara, had done to me. She thought she could manipulate me, break me, isolate me. But today, it was my turn. It had all started with a small family gathering. Nothing special, really. Just a few relatives who had somehow avoided the whispers about me, people who still cared enough to show up. But for me, it wasn't about the family anymore. It was about making sure the truth came to light, no matter the cost. I had requested a meeting, not just with my immediate family, but with the few close family friends. I needed a public setting to confront Clara, where everyone would be able to hear me, where the lies couldn't be ignored or swept under the rug. As I walked into the room, I saw Clara sitting there, looking completely composed. She had that look, the one she always wore when she thought she was in control. I could tell she had no idea what was coming. She probably thought this would be another one of her attempts to make me look unstable, a final plea for sympathy to turn the tables in her favor. But I was done with her games. I took my seat and the room went silent. Every pair of eyes was on me, and I could feel the weight of their gaze. They all knew about the rumors, about the stories Clara had been spreading, but they hadn't heard my side of things. Not yet. "Thank you all for coming," I began, my voice steady but firm. "I'm tired of the lies that have been spread about me. I'm tired of being made out to be the villain, when in reality, I've only ever been a mother doing the best I could." I paused, making sure I had their full attention. Clara's eyes were cold, but there was a flicker of something, anxiety, perhaps. She hadn't expected this. I've spent years supporting my daughter in every way possible, financially, emotionally, physically. I've given everything for her. But she's taken and taken without once giving anything back. Clara's lips tightened, and I could see her shifting uncomfortably in her seat. I could tell she wanted to speak, but I wasn't going to let her. Not yet. I've made financial sacrifices, loans, payments, and I've given when I didn't have it to give. But now, I'm here to set the record straight. I stood up, walking to the table where I had laid out my evidence, copies of bank statements, emails, receipts. One by one, I placed the documents in front of them. Here are the financial records that show how I've supported Clara, how I've been there for her when she couldn't make ends meet. And here are the broken promises, the excuses, the lies I've been fed. You all deserve to know the truth. I could feel Clara's gaze burning into me, but I wasn't backing down. I had gathered everything, documented everything, and now it was time for her to face the consequences of her actions. I handed the first document to one of the family friends who was sitting closest. This is the transfer I made to her last year when she claimed she was struggling to make her rent. I didn't hesitate to help her, and here's the evidence. I continued with each document, systematically showing how much I had given, how much I had sacrificed, and how little Clara had ever shown appreciation. The room was silent, the tension thick. I could feel Clara seething, but she didn't speak. She couldn't. She knew the truth was coming out, and there was no denying it. I looked at the faces around me, some of them surprised, some of them ashamed, but I could see a shift happening. The community that Clara had manipulated, the people who had turned against me, were starting to see what was really going on. They were beginning to realize that the stories Clara had told were nothing more than lies, and I could see the doubt starting to creep into their eyes. Then I did something I knew would change everything. I brought out the most important piece of evidence. The text messages between Clara and me, the ones where she had manipulated me, guilt-tripped me into giving her money time and time again. Here, Clara tells me she needs more money for a medical emergency, only for me to later find out that it was for a shopping spree. And here, she promises to come visit me, but never shows up. I looked directly at Clara. These are the lies you've told me. This is what you've done to me, and I'm done. For the first time, Clara looked vulnerable. Her facade cracked. She tried to speak, but no words came. Clara, you've taken from me for so long, and I let you, but I'm done. I've given everything I can, and I've been left with nothing. My voice was steady, stronger than it had ever been. And today, I'm taking back what's mine. My dignity, my life, my peace. You no longer have power over me. The room was silent for a long time. The community, the family, the friends who had gathered, they were all processing the truth. The lies had been exposed, and Clara's manipulations had crumbled in front of them. Clara finally spoke, her voice shaking. I didn't mean to hurt you, Mom. I just didn't know how to ask for help. But it was too late. The damage had been done. The community now saw her for what she really was, a person who had taken without ever giving and who had used her own mother for her own benefit. I stood tall, feeling the weight of the years of pain and betrayal lift off me. For the first time in a long while, I felt free. The justice I had been seeking had finally been delivered. And it wasn't just about me. It was about everyone who had ever been taken advantage of, everyone who had ever been left behind by someone they loved. This wasn't just a victory for me. It was a victory for all those who had suffered in silence. The days following the confrontation were unlike anything I had ever experienced. The immediate fallout was swift, almost like a tidal wave crashing down, leaving destruction in its wake. Clara, along with the rest of my family, faced public humiliation in a way they hadn't anticipated. The truth was out now, and the community wasn't about to let them off easy. At first, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction, vindication even. As I watched the once perfect image of my daughter,
in the family I had sacrificed for begin to crack. The people who had once rallied around them, believing every word they said, were now questioning everything. Neighbors who had once kept their distance came to me with apologies, offering solidarity and support. It was as if the weight of the lies had been lifted and people could finally see the truth. I had been made out to be the villain for so long, but now I was being seen for what I truly was, a mother who had loved and given too much, and who had finally had enough. Clara's reputation, once untarnished, began to deteriorate. People who had once trusted her began to speak up, sharing their own experiences of being manipulated or misled by her. One by one, the doors she had opened for herself, the relationships she had used began to close. Her carefully constructed facade shattered. And with it, her financial situation started to crumble as well. Without my financial support, Clara found herself struggling in ways she had never expected. I didn't feel guilty. Not anymore. She had always known that what she was doing was wrong, and now the consequences were unfolding.
Meanwhile, I was slowly finding my footing again. The emotional toll of years of manipulation and neglect hadn't been easy to bear. But in the wake of the truth coming to light, I felt a sense of peace begin to wash over me. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe again. I could finally let go of the anger and the hurt that had weighed me down for so long. I could finally heal. But the healing didn't come all at once. There were moments of doubt, moments when I questioned if I had done the right thing. Couldn't I have handled it differently? Was there a better way? But deep down, I knew that this was the only way. This was the justice I had been seeking for so long. This was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my peace of mind. As the community rallied around me, my confidence grew. I became a symbol of strength for others who had been taken advantage of, for those who had been manipulated or betrayed by the people they loved. The messages I received, the support I felt, made me realize that I wasn't alone in this. There were others who had been hurt in the same way, others who had been made to feel small. And I now had the opportunity to show them that they too could reclaim their power. Despite the support I was receiving, Clara's attempts at reconciliation began. At first, I wasn't sure how to respond. Part of me wanted to believe her, to believe that she was genuinely remorseful. She called, texted, and even showed up at my door, pleading for forgiveness. "I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't mean to hurt you. Please, just let me come home," she begged one evening, her voice trembling. But I knew better. I had spent too many years enabling her behavior, letting her guilt trip me into giving more than I should have. I had been her safety net, and she had taken full advantage of it. Her apology, though heartfelt, felt hollow. It was too little, too late. "I can't just forget everything you've done, Clara," I told her, my voice calm but firm. "I've forgiven you more times than I can count. But this time, you need to understand that it's not about me forgiving you. It's about you taking responsibility for your actions." She left that night, tears in her eyes, but there was nothing more to be said. I had made my decision. It wasn't about cutting her out completely. It was about setting boundaries, about teaching her that there were consequences for her behavior. In the following weeks, the attempts to reconcile continued, but they were half-hearted. She tried to play the victim, claiming that the pressure of everything had gotten to her. But I wasn't moved by her manipulation anymore. I had seen it for too long. She was trying to regain control over me, but I had already taken control of my life. And that was when I realized that this was the true victory. the power I had reclaimed, the emotional strength that had been restored to me. I wasn't a victim anymore. I wasn't a puppet being pulled by the strings of manipulation. I was in control of my future, of my relationships, and of my own peace of mind. As the weeks passed, the emotional healing began in earnest. I took time for myself, time to reflect on everything I had been through and to process the loss of what could have been. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I knew now that this wasn't just about standing up for myself against my daughter. It was about standing up for everyone who had been made to feel small, everyone who had been discarded or taken advantage of by someone they loved. I had fought for myself, but I had also fought for all of us. Months had passed since the confrontation, but the long-term consequences of Clara's actions were just beginning to unfold. The financial ruin that had begun to affect her was becoming more apparent. Without the steady stream of money from me, she was forced to face the reality she had long avoided. The lavish lifestyle she had grown accustomed to, paid for by my sacrifice, was slipping away, and she was struggling to maintain it. I watched from a distance, but I felt no satisfaction from her downfall. I had done what I had to do. This wasn't about revenge. It was about accountability. For a time, Clara tried to apologize, to win back my trust. Her efforts were persistent, but hollow. She began to call more frequently, sending texts, showing up at my door. "Mom, I can't live like this. I've learned my lesson," she would say, her voice pleading. "I'm sorry for everything. Please, just let me come back in. I need you." But I knew better than to fall for her words again. Her attempts at reconciliation felt like nothing more than a desperate attempt to regain control. They were half-hearted, motivated more by her own circumstances than genuine remorse. She was suffering because she had no one to turn to. The life she had built on lies and manipulation was crumbling, and she was finally beginning to understand the consequences of her actions. One evening, Clara called and asked if we could meet. I agreed, but only under one condition. I wanted to see her take full responsibility for what she had done, without trying to shift the blame or make excuses. When she arrived, I could tell she had come prepared to apologize. But I wasn't about to let her off the hook without making it clear that forgiveness would only come with boundaries. "Clara, I've heard your apologies, and I know you're sorry for the situation you're in. But this isn't just about you. This is about the choices you've made, the lies you've told, and the way you've treated me. I am not here to be your emotional crutch anymore, to fix everything you've broken. You need to understand that I will not tolerate being treated that way again." She looked at me, her eyes filled with tears, but there was something else, an acknowledgement. She knew she couldn't manipulate me anymore. "I know I've done wrong," she said softly, her voice breaking. "I know I've hurt you, but I swear I never meant for things to get this bad. I didn't know how to handle it all. I was scared, and I didn't want to lose you." I paused, letting her words sink in. She was scared. She had been scared of losing me, but she hadn't been scared enough to treat me with the respect I deserved. "I understand fear," I said, my voice steady. "But that doesn't excuse what you did. You didn't just ask for help, Clara. You used me, you lied to me, and you manipulated me into thinking that you needed me more than you really did. You took advantage of my love, my loyalty, and you broke me down with your selfishness. And that is something I will never forget." Clara's face crumpled, her head dropping into her hands as she cried softly. I could see the regret in her eyes, but I wasn't sure it was enough to make me believe she truly understood the depth of her betrayal. I had learned over the years that actions speak louder than words. "I'm not asking for you to forgive me right away," Clara said, looking up at me, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I want to try, Mom. I want to rebuild what we had. If you'll let me. Please." I studied her face for a moment, letting the silence hang between us. She was vulnerable, broken, but I knew that nothing would change unless she truly understood what had gone wrong. "I can't just forgive you because you're sorry," I said, my tone firm. "Forgiveness isn't a free pass. It's something earned through respect and accountability. If you want a relationship with me, it will be on my terms. I will not be manipulated again. I will not be used. And if you truly want to change, you need to understand that your actions have consequences. I won't let you back into my life just because you say the words I want to hear." Clara sat quietly for a long time, digesting what I had said. When she finally spoke, it was with a new sense of resolve. "I get it. I'm not asking for forgiveness right now, but I want to show you that I can be better. I'll prove it to you." For the first time, I believed her words. There was a quiet sincerity in her voice that hadn't been there before.
I stood up, walking over to her and placing my hand on her shoulder. "I'm not saying we'll go back to how things were, but if you're really willing to change, then we can start to rebuild. But only if you respect the boundaries I've set. Only if you prove to me that you've learned the lesson that needs to be learned." Clara nodded, wiping away her tears. "I will. I promise." The conversation ended and she left, but the weight of it all didn't lift immediately. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was the right one. I had set my terms, and it was now up to Clara to live by them. As I sat in the quiet of my home, I realized that this moment wasn't just about me and Clara. It was about understanding the importance of accountability in all relationships. It was about respect, about the wisdom that comes with standing firm in the face of betrayal. I had learned that I could no longer allow myself to be a doormat for anyone, not even my own daughter. It's been months since the confrontation with Clara, and looking back, I see how much has changed, not just in my relationship with her, but in the way I view my entire life. I've spent years living for others, pouring all my energy into family obligations and giving everything I had without ever asking for anything in return. But now, for the first time in a long while, I feel like I'm truly living for myself. The house that once felt so empty now feels full of possibility. I found new hobbies that I'd never had time for before. I've joined a book club, something I've always wanted to do but never had the chance to. I've taken up gardening, an activity I never thought I would enjoy but now find deeply fulfilling. The garden is blooming with vibrant flowers, and every time I walk outside, I feel the fruits of my labor blossoming right in front of me. More importantly, I've started reconnecting with true friends, the ones who never judged me, the ones who knew me for who I truly was. My social circle, once small and filled with people who only took from me, has now grown. I'm surrounding myself with people who bring positivity, warmth, and real connection into my life. These relationships are built on mutual respect, not manipulation or guilt. The process of rebuilding my life hasn't been easy, but it's been worth every step. I've learned how to set boundaries, how to stand firm in my convictions, and most importantly, how to value my own well-being. I've discovered that there's so much more to life than constantly giving and sacrificing. I'm finally learning to put myself first without guilt. Reflecting on everything I've been through,
I realized the wisdom I've gained. I understand now that true family bonds aren't based on obligation or guilt. They're built on trust, respect, and a willingness to give without expecting anything in return. I've learned that family can mean more than just blood. It's about the people who show up for you, who support you, and who share in your joy and sorrow without taking advantage of you. This journey wasn't just about confronting Clara. It was about confronting myself, about facing the painful truths I had ignored for so long. But through it all, I found a sense of peace that I never thought was possible. I've become stronger, wiser, and more confident in who I am. I've learned that I deserve love, respect, and kindness, and I won't settle for anything less. To anyone watching this who has been through something similar, who has been betrayed, manipulated, or discarded by those they loved, know that you're not alone. Your story matters, and you have the power to reclaim your life just as I did. It's not easy, and it won't happen overnight, but the first step is always the hardest, and it's always worth taking. I invite you to join me in this new chapter of life. If you found inspiration or strength in my story, I'd love to hear from you. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Let's build a community where we can lift each other up, support one another, and celebrate the power of reclaiming our lives. And don't forget to subscribe. There are many more stories like this to come, stories of empowerment, justice, and healing. This is just the beginning of the journey, and I'm so glad you're here to walk it with me. Together, we can continue to rise stronger than ever before. As I look forward to the future, I know that I'm on the right path. I've made mistakes, but I've also learned valuable lessons. And now I'm ready for whatever comes next, because I know that I can handle it. The strength I've found within myself will carry me through whatever challenges lie ahead. This is my new life, and it's a life I'm proud to live.